Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our seventh CEO success story. And today we have with us a very extraordinary individual who has quite a broad background in the telecom world, which he's going to share with us. But he has about 3 decades in the space, in the telecom space, going back to early days of, I guess, since the age of about 21 in a family environment, which he's going to share with us. Very, very deep telecom background, still involved in many ways, which he's going to share with us, both from GreenStar Marketing as the founder CEO and also P2P Tech. What is that? Whoa, hang on.
No
I'm
problem,
going to
Bill.
have to, something's going on here. That is not good. I know what it is, but I can't find it. Is that you? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I thought it
These
was on my computer.
these
So
things, these
sorry.
things there may be a knock at the door here too, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, no, I know what it was. It's something that came on in the background here, which I knew was there, but Connie walked away, so the sound came on. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so uh, I'd like to introduce you all to Dave, Dave George. So, Dave, why don't you tell us a little about your background? And I apologize for that interruption. Go ahead.
Don't, it's not a problem. Those that are watching the video live, thank you for joining. I am Dave George. My first experience in telecom was actually when I was very young, because my great grandfather started an ILEC in eastern Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania, back in 1909. So as I was growing up, I would always go visit with my mom, the central office. It was a family run business. So I was just always into seeing, rows and rows of electronic relays when I was young. And then obviously digital switching. Back in the 90s, it would have been Nortel we had as a switch, for example. And then we, kept going. So for me, it was just something that was sort of commonplace, right? It's just normal to see all this cool technology that was providing services over both copper and even in the 90s over fiber already. I want to say that out loud. Like, we had built fiber to all of the remote nodes and the DSLAMs and so forth back in the 90s. So when I got heavily involved in a company in the late 90s, early 2000, we already had an infrastructure in place. We were partnered with an ISP called Penn Teledata. So you had Ironton Telephone, my family's ILEC. You had Penn Teledata, which is the ISP. And so it was just very much commonplace for me. And so that was really my entry into telecom, as being born into it, so to speak, Bill, to be quite honest with you. So that was my first experience with telecom. And then back in 2016, I was introduced to, I left telecom for a few years and kind of just did consulting for MSPs and IT shops, if you will, and really started to understand their pain points and what they were going through. And then in 2016, as a consultant, I started working for a company called NetSapiens, which is a platform provider. And within a few months, they offered the position of senior vice president and general manager to basically take their company to the next level. And so I worked for them for about 6.5 years, Bill, until ultimately I did the job that I was hired to do, which was help them get to the point where they were acquired by another company, in this case, Crescendo. And that was an enjoyable experience. And I've really enjoyed seeing telecom from a platform perspective, not from a service provider perspective. So it just gave me a different way of looking at what's going on in the supply chain, what, different things to look at when you are a service provider. So that was, another, it was optics perhaps, but it still gave me a different perspective. And then, geez, and I've jumped around a little bit here, but during this time, I met a friend of mine who wanted to start GreenStar. And so we started GreenStar really to help service providers in the wholesale side, being able to get carrier origination and term, faxing solutions, outsourced skilled resources. The list goes on, Bill. And we sort of realized that, service providers are very good at some things, but they could really use some help, for example, with marketing. So we realized that there was a niche there in focused communications centric marketing, where we applied people who came from communications sector, understood those different pain points, and were able to apply a much faster go to market for those service providers. Service providers don't want to hire a general marketing firm and have to train them on what they offer. We can go, we go at it a lot faster. And then the last company, since you mentioned it, was P2P Tech. About a year and a half ago, I co-founded P2P Tech as a technical resource for service providers, predominantly in the NetSapiens and the Portal One ecosystems, but not solely. For us to be able to help them with, operating their platform, adding third-party services, doing software development for specialization. Maybe you want to attack a vertical. And so P2P was formed. And here I am today.
Very good. So what makes the Dave of 2023 tick?
I would say that I think my friends and colleagues would tell you I have a strong passion for this industry. I know I'm fourth generation, so you could say it's in my DNA. But telecom and techcom really are something I'm passionate about. I can also say that I think my friends would also say that I'm the guy that rolls up his sleeves and wants to dig in with the rest of his teammates, regardless of the work. Not afraid to do anything, if you will. And I have a genuine desire to see people succeed at all levels and in all ways, Bill. Recently, I had someone say I smile a lot and that it's almost contagious at times. And so I think that shows, though, that I truly enjoy what I do and that passion just shines through in that smile. Trying to think of, I've been fortunate, Bill. I've encountered a lot of really remarkable people, obviously from some of the companies I've been working for and working with. And, those people, they're people that teach you, the rules of business. They teach you, how to get things done. So I think that there's what makes me tick or what gets things going for me is a very strong passion, a strong work ethic. That even comes from when I was, much younger. My mom was an entrepreneur, Bill. So, at a very young age, she would say to me, if you want something, go out, work hard for it and get it. She really kind of instilled in me an idea that, or embodied in me sort of like, you're bound by nothing. If you want to do it, just go out and do it. Like, don't think about it, just do it. And so, even at a young age, I started my first business at the age of 20 years old.
And it wasn't a paper route, right?
No, it was not a paper route. It was actually, it was high-end car audio and home audio electronics.
Okay.
That I was very interested in. So after high school, that's one of the things I just really got interested in, and decided to make a business out of it with a couple other business partners. And we had a good run. We did it for about 6-7 years. And, I tell people we lasted as long as the Beatles stayed together. Ultimately, we had a difference of opinion on where the business should go. And I was already starting to see that I was very much interested in more of the technology aspect. And obviously, my family's business doing, PBX, key systems, doing internet services, doing cybersecurity, all those kind of things, just obviously was of high interest for me.
So I think that's a great story. I'd like you to add a little bit too about how you
Yeah.
stay active as in martial arts. That's kind of almost a hidden thing that a lot of people may not know about, but it has to have a way. Because the next question I was going to ask you is about how do you weave GreenStar and P2P technology together on a day-to-day basis, but in business strategies. But let's bring in also the martial arts. um, Obviously keeps you active with a different set of people, but how does that actually impact your mindset as a founder CEO of multiple companies?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would comment on is why I started GreenStar and why I started P2P Tech. I think that's important to know, which is that all of those companies were founded, at least for me, with the principles of helping people. It could be a small or medium sized service provider, Bill, but ultimately it was the people who own them and operate them and work inside them. I really wanted to see those companies not just survive but thrive. And the way to make that happen was to basically use GreenStar to fill certain niche needs of those customers, in this case, wholesale services or marketing services. And on the P2P side, to really help them to have that confidence, to normalize and stabilize their platforms, their offerings. So they were very confident in going out to market and achieving their goals and their dreams. So really, the first thing that you have to understand is why did I start those companies? Now, weaving the martial arts in, um, martial arts for me, I don't use it like Sun Tzu, where I'm using it, the art of war, where I'm trying to use it from a strategic and tactical perspective, where I'm trying to attack, from an M&A purpose or from a go-to-market strategy in a region. Although I have read Sun Tzu's Art of War. For me, martial arts and teaching jujitsu and Aikido and Kempo and those other arts, it allows me to refocus and recenter myself, Bill, because I schedule it with training for my students several times a week. So there's a rigor around it, right? There's a cadence and a process even for martial arts, which is I need to do it every week. Even when I'm on vacation, like I am right now here in Key West, enjoying some time, I still literally did some Kempo katas out back by the swimming pool because it's a part of my DNA. It's a part of what makes me tick, going back to your question from earlier. So, martial arts in general, but for me, doing what I do is a form of Zen. I call it moving Zen. And people ask me, why do you like martial arts? Because it's, some people do Tai Chi, some people do yoga, some people might just ride a bicycle, a form of exercise. And certainly martial arts is an exercise, but, you know, here's an opportunity for me to achieve calmness and peace of mind while
Hmm.
actually addressing physical conflict in real time,
Mhm.
right? I've got a person across from me who's swinging at me or trying to take me to the ground, and I'm using martial arts. So I become the calm inside the storm, right? That person attacking me is creating conflict, and I can then be the eye of the hurricane. Since I'm in here in the Keys, I can find that calmness within that. So I think that's the beauty of martial arts for me. Um, so I think that's how I tie martial arts in. Is it allows me to create a certain amount of time for myself. It allows me to have some pause, to reflect. Um, it lets me come up for air and breathe, Bill, look around, decide what I want to do, what my vision is, what my strategies are, and then apply them to business. So, you know, as someone that's been doing martial arts now for 25, 30 years, obviously I'm going to recommend that anyone should take up some form of martial art. There's actually, quite a bit of evidence that it helps children, but there's also a lot of evidence that it helps adults as well. We all talk about what it does for children as far as focus and, being able to deal with conflict and bullying and so forth. But there's a lot of benefits here for business owners as well.
Well, that's why I thought we'd add it into the mix because you have to balance your your business leadership of two companies
Hmm.
plus and all the partners that you work with plus your personal life. And it
Yes.
looks like it looks, at least as an observer from the outside looking in, that you use the martial arts to balance your life, but it straddles into your business because it really impacts your mindset. And for CEOs and leaders, mindset is how you come to work every day and how you treat your people and how you want to be treated yourself and how you treat your partners. Would you agree with that?
A- Absolutely. One of the arts that I teach is Aikido, which is a relatively newer martial art compared to say judo or jujitsu, or certainly kempo. And I do all those martial arts. And Aikido translates roughly as the way in harmony with internal energy. So literally, the art itself is the personification of taking that energy that you have internally and maximizing it based on the energies coming at you, whether it's an attack from an attacker or whether it's the stresses of life. It teaches you to turn, to move, to navigate through it or around it, or to let it even bounce off of you. So I think there's a lot to be learned just from that concept of the term Aikido and what it represents.
You actually, in what you've been saying for the last few minutes, answered what would have been our next question, which is what do you attribute your successes to? But it appears that combining your passion, desire to help people, and some of these martial arts capabilities, which I think impacts your mindset. Um, is there anything else you could add to that?
My successes. Well, I guess you have to first define what success means, right? But I think I'm going to be a little more humble in that I don't want to give martial arts credit. I don't want to give that I was born into it credit. What I'm going to say is this: I don't know the ratio, Bill, but you know, is it sweat equity? Applying effort. I think some people call it grit, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it was a certain skill set that I have. Maybe it's charisma. Um, Again, I'll go even more humble and say maybe it was coincidence or happenstance, um, karma. Maybe it was some karma, or maybe some plain good old luck. I would say most likely it's a combination of a lot of those things. Um, I also think timing, Bill, is a part of success, right? Being in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, or actively surrounding yourself with people that are, you always hear this, smarter than you, sometimes even challenge or frustrate you. Maybe they're visionaries that want to do really good things with you. So I think, when you look at success, I think that, all these pieces come together, and that's what makes me, and that's what makes you what you are. And those things will come based on, your actions and just who you are. So I think the martial arts is a small piece of it. I think, just loving the industry and loving what I do, I think is also a piece of that. And then I think, you know, a little bit of effort, a little bit of scratching and clawing sometimes, right, to get what you want.
Hmm.
And then other times just luck or good timing.
So I would say some of the, you know, my role with the CVA is, is just an advisor, and I talk to Jeff and Bill McLean a lot,
Sure.
uh, and I try to help them. Uh, and I've leveraged my book as a, kind of a thing. But I think everybody, the majority of the CEOs and leaders that are part of the Cloud Voice Alliance, probably in a Venn diagram would overlap you significantly because they have to have grit to have small businesses. They're all small business owners and leaders.
Yes.
They have to be passionate and love what they do. And I would say that they probably all work pretty darn hard.
Yeah.
Some of them I know more than others. I know that they have balanced lives, but I think that there's a lot to learn uh, from each other, which is, again, one of the reasons when Jeff Dorkin and I first put this whole program together, that the CEOs can learn from each other. People can learn different things from each other. What did what other advice that we may not have talked about might you give the Cloud Voice Alliance leaders and members?
Wow. Um,
Yeah, we didn't plan on that one. That's kind of a throw in.
no, that's okay. I'm just thinking about, what would I, you know, I think CEOs in general have different visions than their teams. So I think you have to stay humble and listen to your team and understand what their goals and dreams are. Um, you can't expect everyone to have that same entrepreneurial spirit. You can't order it on Amazon online. You can't have it delivered to your house like a pizza, right? So I think because most of the people that we're talking about here are small, medium-sized business owners, I would say apply your life lessons, add in a bit of imagination, and just go for it. Seek the extraordinary in both you and your team. Like, just unearth that raw entrepreneurial, spirit, the works that you're looking for,
Yeah.
but do it based on your previous experiences. Trust them. You went through them, right? You may be not prepared for it. That has happened to me several times, Bill. I wasn't prepared sometimes for the businesses I started or the product sets that I decided to launch. And most of those exploits for me have only been appreciated in retrospect. I want to be very clear. So I think a lot of times when I talk to my friends that are also business owners, CEOs, they want that instant gratification. I can tell you humbly, it's rare that you get to appreciate in the now, in my humble opinion.
So,
Um,
yeah,
you know,
I love that response. I think that's a great response for everybody, me included, by the way. And my career is 5 decades behind me, so
right. I mean, I like to tell people that I've won and lost in business, and I've lived and loved, and won and lost in life, with equal fervor. But I wouldn't trade those experiences, Bill. Right? I mean,
mhm.
those experiences form the CEO you'll ultimately be, or whatever position you're in, and those experiences will carry you through when you are struggling or when you've hit a plateau. Um, so, you know, I think that um, I think my advice would be to remain humble, listen to understand, and and a little bit of enjoy the ride too, Bill. It's not
It's
a
good.
destination; it's a journey.
It's a journey,
Yeah,
and that's a fact.
yeah,
So so those are great pieces of advice, and clearly you have some great experiences to share. So in my day-to-day consulting business, which is what I do now, in my semi-retired state, I'm writing my second book, which is about CEO mistakes, how to avoid them if you haven't made them, and how to recover if you had. Hopefully, come out the first part of next year. But I run into generative AI stuff every day, and I've become a heavy user of Gen AI. It doesn't write anything. In fact, I recently put up a post on LinkedIn that says all of my content is original, but and manufactured and written by me. But I do use AI for many things, and um, I recently came to agreement with TMC to do a CEO Insights panel at IT Expo in February, of which Dan Rosenrausch and you are going to be on the panel, and possibly a third CEO that I've been talking to that's interested. and that's about generative AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of issues around it. Um, do you have any advice for our audience on how to integrate Gen AI successfully into their businesses and stay within the law and not upset customers, but actually increase productivity? Because that's what I see it is capable of.
So, yes. Generative AI is certainly, as you and I have discussed about a week ago, it's definitely in the zeitgeist. I mean, everyone talks about it. Um, as for integrating, Gen AI into your business, and this is my perspective, is I think one should consider their internal team's needs first. Why? You get that buy-in. Let them tell you how AI will make their lives better and more productive,
Very
and
good.
that'll spill over to better customer experience for your customers. Call it a ripple effect. Sometimes small acts, can have a huge ripple effect. Um, and certainly, I don't think you should be afraid to say that some things were done by AI. If it's repetitive or monotonous tasks, Gen AI or machine learning to me makes perfect sense for
Perfect.
those scenarios. But let me give you a little story here that I think is interesting, though, which is, you know, I think people have to remember, though, that Gen AI via aggregated or pattern data is not disruptive or like intuitive human thinking. It's just not yet.
Mhm.
And that's one of the moral issues that we're having, right? Do we morally or ethically let AI make a decision for me? And so I was watching an interview with Sir Richard Branson of Virgin, and he was laughing about how no AI engine, Bill, would have told him to shift from Virgin Records to Virgin Airlines, even today with the best algorithms. And why? Because his dyslexic mind, it doesn't follow standard data programming. It doesn't follow any kind of algorithm. And so I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that generative AI, at least today, is certainly a nail gun instead of a hammer, right? No question. But I still want a skilled carpenter building my house, and maybe they're
Mhm.
holding that nail gun instead of a hammer, but I still want the skilled carpenter. So I think we need to stay true to the concept of it is an incredible tool, very powerful, um, but let's not lose sight of our humanity because there are concerns like job displacement. Social bias is a big one that I think a lot of people are concerned
Mhm.
about because we've seen things in just the recent past where, elections and, and even just commentary on the changes at Twitter, for example. I think we need to really try to understand more of that before we launch this thing, full steam ahead. And I'm not saying we should stop it. I'm simply saying that there are definitely moral, ethical, um, job displacement, and social biasing concerns, in my humble opinion, that need to be looked at before we go, all the way down that rabbit hole. Because once you launch it, it's hard to pull things back.
Mhm.
And we know that regulatory and government are typically slow to move. So I think we collectively, being part of the tech influence, need to figure that out.
Right. Well, it's AI has been around a long time for those who actually are in the tech world and they followed it. But the commercialization of it was enabled by OpenAI and ChatGPT, obviously. So now it's probably 80% of all the funding from both venture capital and private investors. 80% of that is in AI based software tools.
Yeah.
And if you do anything else, it's very difficult to get money. So there's new tools coming out every day. There's new platforms, and that's why it's so interesting. But it's already made it to Washington, led by Sam Altman from OpenAI and Microsoft and a few other people, to have regulation that
Yes.
can be global. Because what do you do with with AI in the hands of some of our adversaries? That's the challenge. It's a
Yeah.
global thing.
cybersecurity alone is a huge concern. I was reading an
Right.
article where uh, AI is able to actually understand the keystrokes that you're typing when you put your password in. I
Hmm.
mean, that with a 98% accuracy, I believe I read. That's that's concerning, right? I
That's
mean,
pretty scary. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can put 25 characters in, but if it can read the keyboard, you know,
Yeah.
you know, so I do think that there's things that we need to talk about, societal, regulatory, social, etc., that need to be definitely part of the conversation. Um, Regulation is one of them, so I'm glad to hear that it's moving forward there. Um, but at the same token, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I am playing around with ChatGPT
Hmm.
3.5 and 4. I am playing around with Adobe's Fire. I mean, in other words, I don't want to say on this call that I haven't used it. What I want to say is that I'm using it no different than other tools in my tool belt.
Right. Okay. That's a great answer. So, as we come down the stretch here, do you utilize LinkedIn for your businesses?
Certainly. Actually, my businesses are on several social media platforms. Obviously, LinkedIn for me is the most beneficial from a B2B.
Hmm. Okay. And how what exactly do you do there? What would you recommend to others to consider to do?
Sure, sure. So, in a general context, I would say, you want to use social media to build an audience, a following, a professional networking group, if you will. And the way you do that's by providing relevant content and commenting on that relevant content.
Mhm.
If those posts or content are meaningful, um, you hope to become a thought leader and maybe even an SME, right? A subject matter expert on that topic. And as you continue to grow your audience. I would also say you want to look at using social media to get more search presence, right? You want to get your SERPs up. So that means you want to get your
Mhm.
search engine results pages, giving you more and more awareness, more and more opportunity to rank for branded searches and even non-branded searches.
Mhm.
Um, what else? Credibility of
Mhm.
contacts, exposure, validation. I just read LinkedIn claims 75% of people for B2B purchases use LinkedIn or other social media. I think marketing profs just said 84%. So the point is we know it's around 3 out of 4 people use social media to make buying decisions. I think that's what's
Mhm.
important in that particular regard.
Way
Um,
before they ever hit your website.
Way but correct, they're validating you on social media to make sure you're real, you have a heartbeat, and then they might go to your website to learn about the solutions you're offering, or maybe get a little more granularity as far as the history of your company or who you are, and so forth. Now Bill, that's kind of high level. For me personally, I use LinkedIn to communicate with colleagues and friends. um, I've even hired some talent that I met on LinkedIn very successfully. I've definitely partnered with some businesses. I've even done some endorsements for people who are looking to get hired and wanted me to, basically endorse them. So I think it's important that you can use LinkedIn beyond just a marketing strategy. You can use it as well from a communications perspective. And then the last thing I'd add is I use social media and not just LinkedIn, but others like Facebook and Twitter or X and such, um, to basically promote awareness of one of the nonprofits that we're involved with, which is the CRPS Warriors Foundation.
Excellent. And people go online and they search specifically for that, so they would find that.
So, so for the CRPS Warriors Foundation, I actually have decided to create a campaign to help them. So I do social media posts for them each month. I do a blog every 2 months. We donate every month a percentage of our top line revenue to the CRPS Warriors Foundation. Now, if you're wondering, well, why are you so passionate about it? One of my colleagues, my chief technical officer, um, he's had CRPS for about 13 years, Bill,
Mhm.
and it's not really well known. but this is a disease that's more painful than amputation without pain medicine. It is more painful than childbirth without taking any type of medication. So on the pain
Wow.
scale index of 0 to 50, it ranks around a 44, 45.
Hmm.
Childbirth is 39, just to put it in perspective. And unlike childbirth, where there's a start and hopefully a finish, with him, it can be literally days, weeks of constant pain. There's been some press about this because George Clooney has CRPS.
Mhm.
He was filming Syriana, and there was an injury while filming the movie, and so now he has CRPS in his back. But very painful. I've seen what it does to someone. So we're very adamant that we're going to keep promoting the CRPS Warriors Foundation.
Wow, that's excellent. So what advice would the Dave of 2023 give to the Dave of 2001?
Well, I guess I would say to myself that, you know, in life, there's a couple moments that are going to ordain your future. So just enjoy the journey. There's definitely fortunes still to be had. Not that money is my motive, just to be clear. I think money is a means, not a motive. But I'm definitely interested in those journeys. Win or lose, by the way, Bill. I just want to be on that journey. I use Formula One racing as an analogy. I want to be one of the race car drivers, and there's only like 40 on a racetrack when you're talking Formula One, right? So I want to be one of those race car drivers on the racetrack, knowing full well that I can't always win. I may even crash, and I might even crash and hit the wall, right? But I still want to be part of that race. So I want to be one of those people that's engaged. I want to be part of the race. I want to be part of those opportunities. So I think I would say to myself, Dave, yes, you can learn to drive a different race car, a new race car. Just be part of that experience, get engaged. And again, as I said earlier, and just enjoy the ride.
Mhm. So last question before we hit the lightning round.
Okay.
What is one factoid that no one really knows about you that you can share with us? You already shared some, but this is more of a fun one, right?
Yeah. So almost 4 decades ago, I was an avid vert skateboarder, Bill. Um, I can't believe my mom allowed me to build the giant half pipe in the backyard. I had the checkered Vans. I had the haircut. I had the clothes, the whole 9 yards. And I even traveled and competed at skate parks up and down the East Coast. And I was definitely the youngest of the bunch. All the friends that were able to compete to go with me, they had their driver's licenses. They could rent a room. I could not. So just to give you some perspective, I was the youngest in the group, but I was probably the best of us from a vert skating perspective. I could do more tricks. I could do more things. I definitely got more notoriety and press, if you will.
Did
So
you
it's
ever
actually
meet
pretty good.
did you
I'm
ever
sorry.
meet Tony Hawk?
You're taking my thunder from me. So I skated with a bunch of pros, but I would always jokingly say, "But I'm no Tony Hawk." Right now, fast forward to just about maybe 4 years ago, I'm flying home from San Diego to get to Detroit for a layover, which will then get me home to Pennsylvania. And of all the people to sit down right next to me was Tony Hawk. And I noticed him coming on the plane because he had a skateboard. And of course, he's really tall and lanky. And I'm like, is that, and so he sat down next to me, obviously a living legend in the skateboarding community. I would even argue in the video game world as well. But what was cool, I got to talk to him for 4 hours because it was just me and him. And we talked about what really matters for him. We talked about his businesses. And what was really interesting was when I said, well, what's the most important thing for Tony Hawk? He looked across the aisle to his wife. And so that really kind of, that chance encounter really kind of resonated for me, Bill, because obviously as a kid, he was my idol, and then to have him sit down and be able to talk about things way beyond just skateboarding. I mean, most of our conversation was business and family. So
Hmm.
I think that's a factoid that I'd like to share. So.
That's a great one. I got a chance to see him live. I lived in Huntington Beach for I don't know, 9 years or so.
The
So
Bones Brigade. Sure. Yes.
I saw a lot of skateboarding in my days. I didn't, but my kids did. So in the lightning round, three quickies, so two cookies actually is all I have.
Okay.
Um, w- what's one piece of advice you would give to any of the CEOs or leaders here in hiring a Gen Z into their company?
Oh, interesting question. Okay. So I think from a CEO's perspective, they have to remember that the Gen Zers typically want to own their own identity. They like to collaborate with people they care about and are self drivers on things that are larger than them that they also care about. So when you hire, you have to be authentic with them. You're going to have to teach them to embrace mentoring because they believe in self reliance, right? For them, self reliance is always better than having to be mentored down from, if you will, in my humble opinion, which also requires everyone in that process being patient, right? The employer,
Hmm.
the team, and of course, the Gen Zer. You got to remember, they grew up with everything internet based, right? Everything was at their
Right.
fingertips. So the speed and scale of their expectations is different than mine or yours, Bill.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think that's what I would probably, I think that's what I would tell CEOs is consider what Gen Zers believe and embrace that. On social media, there's a lot of what I'll call negative Gen Z press, but I think it's misplaced because no one's taking the time to understand how they see the world, the fact that they were able to, they didn't need to get their driver's license at 16 because they could hit a button on their phone and have a Uber or Lyft show up at their door. Like, and once you understand that, you understand that their motivations are just different, not worse, not better, just different.
Different.
So we need to embrace that. Now, if I'm talking to a Gen Zer, um, they need to remember that things aren't always going to come as easily or as quickly as they might want or they might expect, right? So just as I've been saying, enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. I almost would tell that to them as well. Like, slow down and smell the roses a little bit here. Not everything has to come in one day. If you're motivated to move up the ladder, if you have aspirations of being a business owner, first figure it out. There's no app for that.
Hmm.
Although maybe we should all work on that, right? And create an app for
Yeah,
that. But the point is, enjoy the journey. You'll get there. Be patient.
it's very
That's that's
good.
my that's my advice.
That's a different answer than I usually get. One of the things that's interesting is because I spend so much time in my book is about rookie CEOs.
Mhm.
There's a lot of Gen Zs that are not happy going to work for other companies. They can't find that combination of, um, you know, the cause that they want, the instantaneousness. So they start their own company.
Yep.
And so a lot of these people who grew up digital natives, as you said, they grew up with the phone
Mhm.
in their hand
Yep.
and a computer that was very powerful, not like we did, any of us. But the fact is that they just go and start their own company. And what they're
Mhm.
going to find out is that they're not equipped for the business side. They might be able to write code from the time they're 9 that does something and even develop an app and make some money online, but they can't run a business.
There's a
That's the
rigor to running.
challenge.
Yeah, there's a rigor to running a business that's different from being talented at doing a certain skill or a
Right.
certain work product. So, like you said, they may be able to embrace, YouTube in a certain way, or they might be able to build an app in a certain way, but they don't understand the rigors of when they have to hire that first employee. They don't understand payroll. And some of that's also just, they haven't been taught it.
Hmm.
Um, so that's what I meant when I said they should almost, and it's going to be tough for them, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, they need to embrace mentorship
Yeah, that's a
really
good one.
early on, because that knowledge then can be transferred, and they're sponges. That knowledge transfer won't take a decade, but it's not going to be one day either. Like they need to give it some time to learn from others before they stake their claim, if you will. To me, that's table stakes. They've got to, employers have to understand how Gen Zers want to work and collaborate, and I think Gen Zers need to understand that they have to have some patience and be
Hmm.
willing to work within some confines. Now, you don't want to stifle. I'm not saying we want to stifle entrepreneurship. Just the opposite. But without those foundations, Bill, you're just setting them up for failure.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. So, what's next for Dave George? Or is this your final hurrah, what you're doing right now?
Um, I get that question every once in a while. I don't know if it's because I just turned 53 and I'm getting a little older, or whatnot. But so no, this is not my last business. I don't think. As far as I'm concerned, in many ways, I haven't even really started yet. Um, it's more of the challenge, right, that keeps me going. It's one of the things that wakes me up each morning. It's one of the things that guides me beyond the sunset, as I usually say to some of my friends when they go, "Wow, you're still working tonight." I enjoy it, right? I love what I do, and I love what I do with the people I'm sharing that my businesses and my journey with. So I think I'm just going to continue to plan to do what I do, and if I see another opportunity, maybe it's a niche, maybe it's another gap that needs to be that needs to be filled in the telecom sector, maybe even a non-telecom sector. But I love this industry. I'm going to do it. So
Awesome.
yeah.
What do you think is next for telecom? I guess I threw another one in there,
Oh
but
no, that's okay. So that's interesting. A lot of people are talking about M&A activity, right? Even though things have slowed down, obviously, from 2022 to 2023, what's coming from a merger of companies, um, you know, we've seen a lot of corrections in the valuations of certain companies in the telecom sector. Um, so, from a technology perspective, I don't know if I really have an answer for you. I see so many cool little widgets and gadgets coming out. Um, I will say this, that, a lot of our audience sells UCaaS. I definitely see more of a specialization requirement. I definitely see contact center, omni-channel, customer experience and workflow management, predictive analysis, predictive sentiment analysis, et cetera, all sort of converging on one solution. Um, you know, that I think is going to be, at least incrementally, the next thing that's going to be a hot topic is seeing all this generative AI, but also seeing all these other kind of management tools, processes, integrations, people specializing in certain verticals so they can really own that sector and really, speak to the customer and create a longer value and a higher margin potentially.
mhm,
I think that's what is what I would say I would see for 2024, going into 2024 and even 2025. What the industry will look like in 10 years should be very interesting, though, right?
mhm.
I almost don't even want to say what I think it could be. I just think it's going to be very interesting. Um, you know,
Well,
hopefully
especially
hopefully I have another podcast with you in 10 years and we can talk about
be
it.
interesting to see if I'm still doing it then. I'm already kind of retired. I'm way older than you, dude. Um, so tell the people how they can find you if they want to engage with you or just follow you or
Sure, sure.
talk to you about
So
services.
yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. It's Dave Sheehan. That's DAVESHIHAN. You can also email me if you just want to connect and talk. It's Dave at greenstar-us.com. Obviously, we have websites that you can just Google, or we are a member of the Cloud Voice Alliance. So reach out to Jeff or Bill. and just say, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation with Dave," and I'm sure they can facilitate that for you.
All right, thank you. So, to close out, I just want to remind everyone that in the end of October, the Cloud Voice Alliance is hosting the online virtual event, the UCAS event, on day one. So there's just a virtual. I think I don't know what platform they're using, but on day two, I'm doing the morning keynote with Rich Tarani. Rich is the CEO, of course, of TMC, and he's also an investment banker these days. Rich wrote the foreword of my book, The Rookie CEO. You can't make this stuff up. So I've known Rich for more years than I care to remember. I knew his dad, Najee, and had been going to IT Expo for a long time since my Fujitsu days, a long, long time ago. And so he'll be the keynote breakfast on the second day. But there's a lot of great sponsors, and there's been a couple of emails out to the database, the Cloud Voice Alliance database, and I'm hoping that we can get more and more people to come to that. Jeff has worked hard to put this thing together with Bill McLean now, and so I'd like to see more and more people attend, and there's going to be some really strong sessions. But
Greenstar will Bill Greenstar will be obviously performing one of
yeah,
those sessions, I believe, as well.
right, you are a sponsor, I believe, right?
Yes. Yes.
Which is great. So I want to thank you. I'm sure the CVA thanks you for participating today. Thank you, attendees, for hanging around. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. And thank you very much, Dave. It
Oh,
is a pleasure.
thank you so much, Bill. I had fun. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everyone. Stop recording. Trying to stop recording. Here we go.